Well, thank you for joining us here at Covenant Calendar Club, hosted by Brandon, Conrad, and myself. We're stewards of Torah to the Tribes, and today we're going to do a really wonderful teaching in regards to what the phrase coming out over my people really mean, and what we can do to basically stay out of the Babylonian system and out of our plagues. So Brandon's going to be going over this teaching for us today, so we may be able to be blessed by it and edified by it. So whenever you are ready, Brandon, go ahead, brother.
All right, sounds good. All right, so this just kind of keeps going along with the same theme of there's nothing new under the sun, and that which has been also shall be, that Yahweh has declared the end from the beginning, that we've talked about several times with Isaiah 46:10. So I actually did a teaching on this myself probably a year ago or something like that, talking about forsaking tradition for the sake of the truth. So I wanted to title it this because I'm seeing the importance now, the very large importance of understanding the Melchizedek, and the mystery of Melchizedek, and how everything falls into place, and how literally I truly believe that if someone doesn't understand the Melchizedek message and how we are the dichotomy or the difference between the book of the law and the book of the covenant, and what it means to dovetail with the book of the covenant, in the book of the law and everything like that, that we are lost. We are in either the ditch of lawlessness or we're in the ditch of rabbinical Judaism, rabbinical Torah, where we're trying to fulfill all of the law still and under all of those, ordinances. But we know that the book of Hebrews says that we're under a better covenant, under a better priesthood, right? With better promises. So, why wouldn't we do that, right? So, so why did I call it forsaking tradition for the sake of the truth? Well, I'm going to give you a little analogy, okay? If you don't know this, this is how, and actually, Beth, since she's from Brazil, she can probably vouch for this. I think they got, I think this is where it takes place, is in South America. But in order to catch a spider monkey, what these hunters do is they don't chase them. They don't, shoot stuff at them or anything like that. The most effective way is by taking a gourd and hollowing it out enough to where a monkey can fit its hand into the gourd, and then they'll put a nut in the bottom of it, so that way it's enticed and it wants to go after something, right? So it's sitting there and it's going and grabbing into the gourd to get the nut, but as soon as it grasps the nut in its hand, well, now that hole that it stuck its hand in is too small to get back out with the nut. So literally the monkey isn't smart enough to understand, hey, in order to get away and be free, I have to let go of this nut. But I don't want to let go of the nut because I want the nut so bad, right? This is what Satan ensnares people with. We have to be willing to let go of the traditions that we've been taught, which we're going to get into them in just a second, in order to be free to worship him in spirit and in truth, and to go after the truth and pursue the truth. We can't hold on to both. It doesn't work, right? So that's the reason why I did this. And I'll post a picture to the group later on. I should have had a picture of the actual monkey reaching in. But so I want to pose a question to us today. Is the truth important to Yahweh? Well, I would say yes. John 4:24 says, Elohim is spirit, and those who worship him need to worship him in spirit and in truth. So understanding the Melchizedek is very important, because we know that, if you've listened to the teachings from Matthew, we know that Psalm 110 is about Yahweh saying to Yahweh, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool, right? So the only representation, the only form that Yahweh takes is in Yahusha, right? That's the Melchizedek message, because Elohim is spirit. He is Ruach. So there's only one throne in the Shamayim, in the heavens, in heaven, right? We know this. So he is spirit, and those who worship him need to worship him in spirit and in truth, right? All right, so we're going to talk about the incident and the golden calf here, all right? So let me pull up, here we go. So Exodus 32, 1 through 10 says, "And when the people saw that Moshe was so long in coming down from the mountain, the people gathered together to Aharon and said to him, 'Arise, make us mighty ones who go before us. For this Moshe, the man who brought us out of the land of Mitzrayim,'" or Egypt, "'we do not know what has become of him.' And Aharon said to them, take off the golden earrings which are in your ears of your wives, your sons, your daughters, and bring them to me. And all the people took off the golden earrings which were in their ears and brought them to Aharon. And he took this from their hand, and he formed it with an engraving tool and made a molded calf. And they said, 'This is your mighty one, O Yisrael, that brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim.' And Aharon saw and built a slaughter place before it, or an altar. And Aharon called out and said, 'Tomorrow is a festival to Yahweh.' And they rose early on the next day, and they offered ascending offerings and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. And Yahweh said to Moshe, 'Go, get down, for your people whom you brought out of the land of Mitzrayim have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made themselves a molded calf and have bowed themselves to it and slaughtered to it and said, "This is your mighty one, O Yisrael, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim." And Yahweh said to Moshe, "I have seen this people, and see, it is a stiff-necked people. And now let me alone, that my wrath might burn against them, and I consume them, and I make of you a great nation," or Goy Gadol. So this is what I want to tell us, because if we're not worshiping the Father in spirit and in truth, either knowingly or unknowingly, directly or indirectly, we are committing adultery. Because see, Aharon and the children of Israel, they thought that they were doing the right thing, right? Because he even said, tomorrow is a feast to Yahweh. So they thought that they were slaughtering to Yahweh, even though, what was it? So this is Exodus 32. So, and we know that, that some of the Torah is not chronological. Some of it's achronological, right? Because we know that the book of the law was added for the sin of transgression at the golden calf. That's what Galatians 3 tells us, right? But they had just previously said, after Yahweh gave all the terms and conditions of his covenant of, "You shall have no other mighty ones before me," this and this and this. And sadly, I still don't have these memorized. Wow, that's so bad. Anyway, I digress. But the point is that he listed out the terms of his covenant, right? All the way, we know this all the way up to Exodus 24:11. They had, in order to have a covenant, you have to have a proposal, right? These are the terms and conditions. It's called a ketubah in the Hebraic. It's a vow. It's, hey, these are the terms and conditions of this covenant. Then you have to have an acceptance. Well, the people said twice, once in, I believe it was Exodus 19, before the covenant was even given, and then once again in Exodus 24 after it was given. And they said that all that Yahweh has said, we will do. So they accepted. Then you have to have a blood ratification, so a slaughtering, right? And then you have to have a covenant confirming meal. So these four aspects were there. So this is what they accepted, right? Now, the second commandment, though, they were already breaking because he said, don't make any graven image, right? So we can't worship the Father on our terms. We have to worship him on his terms, you know, and that's what this is all about. Because, you know, Hosea 6 verse 4 says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. So we have to get knowledge. We have to get wisdom. We have to gain understanding. That's what the book of Proverbs is all about encouraging us. In all you're getting, get wisdom. In all you're getting, get understanding, right? Because they were worshiping the Father that the way that they wanted to worship him, not the way that he desired to be worshiped. You know, just like when you try and introduce the names of Yahuwah and Yahusha to some people, or you try and introduce the Sabbath to some people. You know, they're like, oh, well, he doesn't care. He goes by many names. Really? Did he tell you that? Or is that something you learned in tradition? You know, and these are just things we have to deal with, right? Because they worshiped this thing. You know, they built a calf to it, or they built a calf. They slaughtered to it. You know, that's what the picture of the burnt offering is and everything like that. And they had a feast. You know, they celebrated it, you know. And at the bottom here, I have this phrase. So taking us, I won't say you, I'll just say us, right? Taking us out of Egypt is one thing, but getting Egypt out of us is another. Meaning this, that the habits and traditions that we had when we were in Egypt, whatever Egypt is for us, you know, he can take us out of Egypt, but it's a whole nother thing to cleanse the inside of the cup and get all these traditions out of us. So that way we don't long and desire for Egypt again, because that's what the whole issue was. You know, if you read throughout, we're going through these Torah portions and everything, and we're reading about, you know, through the book of Numbers and everything, and, you know, you had a mixed multitude, you know, where you had not just Yasharel was present, but some of the Egyptians were there as well. You know, maybe it was, this is just a hypothesis, but maybe it was some of the Egyptians who, you know, when the hail was about to be poured out and Yahweh gave that warning of, hey, you know, tell everybody who's in the field to come out of the field and come into the shelter, you know, because tomorrow I'm gonna rain hail down on the land, and everyone who's out in the land is gonna get punished by the hail, you know, and most likely killed by the hail, right? So maybe it was some of them, I don't know. But we know that it was a mixed multitude. And this was the issue, is that the mixed multitude, that's what, you know, early on in the book of Exodus, like in Exodus 14, Exodus 15, that's when people started grumbling, complaining. Moshe, you brought us out here into the wilderness to die. Were there not enough graves in the land of Egypt? We could have just died there, you know. And they're like, oh, we had plenty back then. You know, we had food, we had water, we had all this. Did you bring us out here to die? You know? And they just began to doubt, right? Over and over and over. How many times do we read? I mean, that they began to grumble and complain, and, you know, Yahweh would send different plagues among them, between, like, you know, the fiery serpents and, you know, all these sorts of things, because that corruption had to be purged from them, right? So we must be careful about how we worship the Father. You know, people who say, like, oh, the Shabbat doesn't matter, the feasts don't matter, he knows my heart. Yeah, he knows your heart. He knows that it's wicked, exceedingly wicked above all things. That's what our hearts are. You know, don't follow your heart, follow his word. That's what we follow, right? We were led by the Spirit, the Ruach of Elohim. All right. So I say all that to say this, as our brother Matthew would say. We all have a past, okay? We all have baggage that we brought with us into the camp, into the priesthood, right? For me personally, I grew up as a Catholic for 16 years and another 16 years as a non-denominational or you could call me like a Pentecostal Christian, and it wasn't until actually right around this time 2 years ago that I felt the call to come out of For My People. Now, the reasoning was different. I won't go into that right now, but it turned out to be that clarion call that I felt the call of the Ruach telling me, I all of a sudden had the desire, like, wait a minute, the Sabbath wasn't just for the Jews, and wait, the Jews aren't even the only tribe, and, maybe I should look into these feasts, and all this stuff was happening, and we know that all of us have experienced this, right? But, so we all have baggage, though. We all have a past. I'm just asking us, let's just all forsake our idols. Let's just leave Egypt behind. Let's leave Mystery Babylon behind, and let's, press forward, right? So, and just to bring this point again, directly or indirectly, anything outside of the way that he desires to be worshipped is idolatry of some form or fashion, whether it's unknowingly or knowingly, purposely or unpurposely, right? And, what I relate this to, because we know that this is about a covenant, right? We know that it's about the mystery that Ephesians 5 talks about, the Apostle Paul talks about, is he relates Yahusha and his bride, the ecclesia, the so-called church, the assembly, to a man and his wife, right? And he talks about a mystery in Ephesians 5. And that's what it's about. It's about, see, I can try to love my wife, in the way that I feel that I would want to be loved, but I'm going to get minimal results from that. There's going to be minimal, benefits to her, and her love tank's going to be pretty empty if I do that. But if I learn what she likes, what makes her tick, what makes her feel loved, and then also I learn what she doesn't like, this is what it's like with Yahuwah, right? We learn his love language. That's why, praying powerful prayers about asking him, hey, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? What's on your heart? I want to know, because it makes him feel that, hey, they don't just treat me, because honestly, a lot of believers, they treat him like a genie. And he's not a genie, far from it. He's the all-powerful creator of the heavens and the earth, the uncreated one, that's what he is. And, we are his children, right? But he wants to be worshiped in a certain way, and his love language is obedience with the right attitude. You can see it all throughout the Torah. All throughout the trip in the wilderness, we see it, right? It's very clear what he wants. That's why even in Colossians 3, it talks about do everything without grumbling and complaining, right? So anyway, so I'm just saying, let's just place in the trash all the doctrines and traditions of men, right? This is a representation right here, the golden calf. Here's the cross of Tammuz. Here's the so-called Star of David, which is actually the Star of Rampham. Here's the moon. Maybe for some who are watching this in the future, that might represent a Muslim faith that you once had, or maybe you're still in between. What calendar you want to follow and everything like that. Maybe you're still checking out the lunar Shabbats. Maybe you're still checking out a lunar calendar. But after Brother Jose finishes speaking, I think that you'll be pretty convinced by the truth that what the truth is, right? So, but we have to let go of all these traditions. I could even throw a Christmas tree in here as well. But we got to let go of all this, because this is what so easily ensnares us. This is what, like, picture this man reaching in this trash can. This is the gourd, and this is the spider monkey, and this is what we're trying to hold on to. But we can't hold on to the traditions of man and reach out and try and grasp a hold of the truth of the Melchizedek priesthood. We just can't do it. We're going to be stagnant. We're going to be right there. And Yahushua even says, anyone who, turns their back from the plow, he's not worthy of my kingdom, right? So, some of us come from a Catholic background, Christian, Messianic, SDA meaning Seventh-day Adventist, Jehovah's Witness, Hebrew Roots movement, etc. And also the thoughts, right? That's what this represents right here. So one of the big things that I had to lose was my Greek linear Western mindset, especially in regards to the biblical prophecy, where I just wanted to see everything in a line and have everything in a timeline, right? Whereas we're learning now, or I'm learning now that, hey, it's Yahweh's cycles. It's the wheel within a wheel within a wheel. It rolls forward. It's multifaceted, right? And it goes on and on. It waves. It's Shabbat to Shabbat. It's feast to feast, right? So this is what we have to do. We all have things that we have learned that must be laid aside in order to fully grasp the truth of the mystery of Melchizedek. Now, one thing I want to read to you is from Philippians 3 here. And I got to give Brother Don credit for this, because he made a post about this the other day. So appreciate you, Brother Don. So this is the Apostle Paul speaking, of course. I'm going to pull it up in my New King James as well, because I want to read it twice. But it says in verse 12, not that I have already received or already been perfected, but I press on to lay hold of that for which Messiah Yahushua has also laid hold of me. So Messiah Yahushua has laid hold of me. He's grasped me, right? He's reached out and plucked me out of the miry clay. Hallelujah, right? But brothers, I do not count myself to have laid hold of it yet, but only this, forgetting what is behind and reaching out for what lies ahead. I press on toward the goal for the prize of the high calling of Elohim and Messiah Yahushua. Hallelujah. Now, I like the New King James, because that's the one I've used for like 10, 15 years. So I'm just going to read those couple verses again. It says, not that I have already attained or that I'm already perfected, but I press on that I may lay hold of that which Messiah Yahushua has also laid hold of me. Brethren, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which are ahead, I press toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of Elohim and Messiah Yahushua. So those things which are lying behind us, right? That's the traditions of men. That's the baggage that we've brought in. We got to lay it behind us. We can't press on towards the upward calling of Elohim in Messiah Yahushua if we're too busy holding on to the piece of fruit that's in the gourd. The traditions, the sins, the doctrines and knowledge of men that so easily entangle us. Because I'm telling you right now, that if you are seeking the wisdom and the knowledge of men in this hour, you are in grave danger, okay? Because there are people who are falling by the wayside right now. The great falling away is happening right now. People are denying Messiah left and right. They're going after these extra books. They're going after the traditions of men. They're throwing out the entire, they're throwing out Paul. They're throwing out Messiah. They're throwing out all the New Testament altogether, because that's what happens. There's two ditches. Right? We're going to get to this in a second. But there's two ditches. There's lawlessness on the, and it doesn't matter right or left, whatever, but there's lawlessness, and then there's rabbinical Torah, rabbinical Judaism. But the narrow path is the importance of the Melchizedek. That's why it's right down here, narrow path, the 7-branch menorah, not that 9-branch. We don't need 2 extra branches, right? But Matthew 7, verse 13 and 14 says, enter in through the narrow gate, because the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. Because the gate is narrow and the way is hard pressed. It's afflicted, which leads to life, and there are few who find it. Now, isn't it interesting that, Brother Conrad just gave us a beautiful teaching. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch it the last 2 weeks on the book or on the Day of Atonement, and how we're called to afflict ourselves, right? So because the gate is narrow and the way is hard pressed, which leads to life, there are few who find it. So we will be afflicted in this life. We will be afflicted now rather than being afflicted later, right? Because I'm telling you, if you you go back and watch the Torah portion, I think it's like Numbers 18 or something like that, about, and I can't even pronounce it right now, but it was about the lamps and the oil of the lamps, and how, in order to produce pure oil all the time, in order to keep those menorahs burning, the lamps burning, they had to make sure that all the flesh was off of the olive. So our flesh has to be out of the way in order for us to produce good oil, good, pure, clean oil, in order to keep the fire burning, right? Hallelujah. All right. Moving on. Whoops. Moving on. All right. So, and we're not going to talk about all this right now. I'm just kind of giving you kind of a layout of where we're going to be going. All right. But so this is what it's all about. It's about coming out of her, my people. Some people, because of their traditions, and I'm not trying to offend anybody personally. That's never my goal. But I know that there's some of these traditions that we've spoke on where, they think that, like, maybe Christianity thinks that the Roman Catholics and Catholicism is coming out of her, coming out of that. And then there's those who think that, no, it's actually, it's Christianity's tied with that, and you got to come out of that as well, but all of it we need to come out of, right? We need to come out of it all. It's multifaceted. And what I mean is this. So we know that in Revelation 17, verse 1, talking about the great harlot and the beast, right? Now, I'm not going to rehash what Brother Matthew just touched on last week. That's not my goal. My goal is to present it in a different way. But it says, and one of the 7 messengers who had the 7 bowls came and spoke to me, saying, come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot, sitting on many waters, right? And then also, so many waters represents the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples, crowds, nations, and tongues. So, and Matthew already touched on that. But the reason I bring up that point is to say this. So she sits on many waters. She's multifaceted. So she's not just one thing. It's not just coming out of her, my people, isn't just linked to, Sunday worship. It's not just linked to not going to church anymore. It's not just linked to one thing. That's that Greek linear mindset, that we have to get rid of, right? We have to be patient with ourselves and really develop this cyclical Hebraic mindset. But we must come out of Babylon in every way, right? We know the verse, Revelation 18:4, and I heard another voice from the heavens saying, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins and lest you receive of her plagues. Right? So my people, this is Yahweh speaking, right? His people are in her. Come out of her, my people. Come out of her. My people are in her. They're involved with Mystery Babylon, and they need to come out of her. That's why partially, again, I go back to Hosea 6, verse 4. My people perish for a lack of knowledge. They're my people, but they're perishing for a lack of knowledge. You get what I'm saying here, right? And then also, Sister Julia mentioned last night, 2 Chronicles 7, verse 14, that it talks about if my people, again, it's Yahweh's people, right? His people, who are called by whose name? His name, not a title, not Lord, not God, not any of that, right? Called by Yahweh's name, will humble themselves and pray, afflict themselves. Anah, right? Just like Brother Conrad has showed us what it means to afflict ourselves. Humble themselves and pray and seek whose face? His face, and turn from their wicked ways. Then I will hear from heaven, I will forgive their sin and heal their land. So it's all about his people, right? So how are the ways that we must come out of her? Well, physically, right? We think about the Exodus. They actually physically exited Egypt. They didn't stay inside Egypt, right? And then think about Sodom and Gomorrah as well. Before the judgment came, they listened to the calling of the angels when they showed up, and they said, you need to get out of the city. If Lot and his family would have stayed in the city, they would have been consumed in the city's judgment, right? These are all shadow pictures of this, okay? Emotionally, don't look back. Remember the people in Egypt, in the wilderness, and I think that that's what's going to come again. I think there's going to be temptation in the wilderness where people are going to long to go back to the cities. They're going to think, oh, it was better there. We had the rations of the government. We had all this. This is hard pressed out here. But I'm telling you, we got to stay low. We got to stay humble. We got to stay meek. We got to stay kind, because we might get taken out just like they did in the wilderness with different plagues. The opportunity to fall will be there. I promise you it will be. He wouldn't do it back then and then not do it again. It just doesn't make sense, right? But don't look back. Remember Lot's wife. I mean, Yahushua literally said, quoted, remember Lot's wife. Remember Lot's wife. I mean, enough said, right? We know that she looked back, she was turned into a pillar of salt. Mentally, we're in this world, but we're not of this world, right? Romans 12, verse 1 and 2 says this. I call upon you, therefore, brothers, through the compassion of Elohim, to present your bodies a living offering or a living sacrifice, set apart, well-pleasing to Elohim, your reasonable worship. So what's our reasonable worship? To live as a living sacrifice, a living offering to him. In verse 2, it says, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you prove what is that good and well-pleasing and perfect desire of Elohim. How do we renew our mind? By prayer, by praise, and by the word, right? We got to wash ourselves with the water of his word. That's how we cleanse ourselves, right? That's the process, sanctification, right? So we're in this world, but not of this world. Financially, we can't serve two masters. Now, I'm not saying this right now, but there will be a point where there will be a point of no return, where you will have to draw the line in the sand of who is my source? Is it my career? Is it the government? Is it the stimulus plan? Is it the unemployment? Is it the Social Security I'm getting? Whatever it is. Or is it Philippians 4:19, and my Elohim shall supply all, what needs? All of your needs according to his riches. Whose riches? His riches and glory in Yahushua HaMashiach. What does he own? He's the owner of the cattle of 1,000 hills. Is there anything that's impossible for him? No, there's not. But when the rubber meets the road, which is what I believe that the tribulation is all about, it's the testing, it's the hour of trial. That's what Yahushua refers to it as, is, are you going to be faithful? Are you going to be faithful to me? Even if it costs you your life, are you going to be faithful to me? That's what he wants to know. Because it's all about, because I'll quote a pastor that I used to listen to. His name was Mike Bickle. He taught me a lot of great things. You know, he at least knew that the pre-trib was a lie. He at least taught to go through. And his mentality was this about the tribulation. He said that the goal of the tribulation is not to survive, but the goal of the tribulation is to be faithful even unto death. And that's backed by what Yahushua said. He said, he who loves his life will lose it. But he who loses his life for my sake will find it. Right? Don't worry about those. Don't be afraid of those who have power over only your body but not your soul, but rather fear the one who has power over your body and your soul. Right? So there will be a time where we have to decide, you know, and I already had this time, you know, back in March. I walked, I'm not bragging about it, I'm just giving my testimony about this, that I already made this decision. You know, my career tried to tell me, you can't preach the gospel anymore. You can't warn people anymore. And I said, then you're not my source. He is, you know. And during that 3.5 months of you know, being laid off, you know, and then the testimony of saying, you know what, Yahweh, I'm not going to bow down. I would rather starve in this world and feast in your kingdom than to feast in this kingdom and starve in yours and not be in yours, right? And I told him, I just spoke it. It wasn't even a prayer. It wasn't even I asked for it or whatever, but I declared out of my mouth, I said, the only way I'm going back into a career is if I don't have to wear a mask and I don't have to get a temperature check. And you know what? James chapter 5 verse 16 says that the prayer of a righteous man availeth much, because that's exactly what he gave me. I have a woke boss who doesn't care if I preach the gospel online. He said, hey, what you do online, that's your business. You know, so stand. Having done all to stand, stand. Stand therefore in the armor of Elohim. Put on the full armor of Elohim. It's time to stand, you guys. This is what Matthew's been talking about. Because I'm not bowing down to the NWO. I'm not. I'm here to tell you that. I'm not bowing down. You know, culturally, unmasked, unveiled. If you haven't watched the Revelation 16 teaching where Matthew gives a great layout of how to deal with this issue and how to stand and stand on the you know, using their laws against them, basically, that, you know, we are called to deal with one another and do business with one another, our fellow man, panaim al panaim, face to face. And also we're called to, in order to worship in spirit and in truth, we are called to remain face to face with our Elohim as well, with Yahuwah, right? So no pagan customs though, you know. I remember, I think it was like 18 months ago or so. Well, not quite, but it was like a little over a year ago. I remember we just took the Christmas tree one day. We just took it, and I just was like, you know what? We made the decision. We're not going to celebrate this. Why do we still have it? And I just took it and I just threw it at the curb. You know, if I'd have been in the country, I would have set that thing on fire. But you do that kind of stuff in the city, and you know, you get calls on you. But we got to forsake our idols, you know. And spiritually, don't just succumb to her one world religion, because I'm here to tell you that this whole Abrahamic covenant, this peace plan that's bringing Christianity, Islam, and Judaism all together in one, that's a three-headed monster you don't want to deal with, because that's what it's all about. Because right now, there's, in that lawless path right now, there's pastors who are literally leading their sheep right to the slaughter. They're saying you got to practice social distancing. They're saying you got to wear masks. They're having them tested in their parking lots. They're offering free tests. There's one right down the block from me. You know, I want to go rebuke them every time I see it. You know, but eventually, and also 2,700 evangelical pastors came out this week and said we shouldn't politicize the vaccine. They said that. They encouraged their members to wear masks, get tested, and get the vaccine. And they even twisted Messiah Yahushua's words and said that basically, like, it's part of the golden rule that we should do unto others as we want done unto us, and that he would do this and all this. It's straight witchcraft. And frankly, I've had enough of it. And these Balaams, you know, these false prophets are coming out in droves, leading the masses astray. The lawless are continuing to be led astray. And then you have in the rabbinical Torah, again, they're leading them to these extra books, denying Messiah, throwing out Paul, throwing out the whole New Testament, and eventually they're going to lead them straight to the third temple and straight to the worship of the beast. Because that's what it's all about. Because that's the two ditches. And that's why we're on the narrow path of the Melchizedek. That's why it's so important to stay on this narrow path and understand what we believe and why we believe it, right? So over the next few weeks, we'll get into this. We'll get into what Babylon was about. We'll get into the similarities between, I'm just going to, you know, put forth evidence. You guys can make a decision between, you know, the beast of Daniel, chapter 7, verse 7, Revelation, I forgot to put up Revelation 12, but Revelation 12, the dragon that's mentioned, Revelation 13, the first beast, the beast from the sea, and then Revelation 17 and 18, the beast that the harlot rides on as well. And then also, see, this is their goal. See, Yahweh says that it's good to see brethren dwell in unity, right? Psalm 133. That's the beautiful that's the true unity, right? The unity of the body by the Spirit, right? But then there's the false utopian unity, false peace. This is the New World Order's plan. They want to get everybody on the same religion, same monetary system, universalism everywhere. That's what socialism and oh my gosh, fascism, whatever you want to call it, is all about. I can't think of the word I was looking for, but that's what it's all about, is to get everybody on the same playing field. Which, yeah, that sounds nice, that sounds great. You know, no one's left behind, everything like that. But there's a Luciferic agenda involved, okay? And it's all tied to the Tower of Babel, or Babel, however you want to say it. All right, so wrapping up, this is the last slide here. So a comparison, right? Why does it matter to follow a certain calendar or not? Well, because Babylon continues to follow this over here. So the day starts in the evening, based upon eisegesis, based upon not digging, not studying to show yourself approved, that 2 Timothy 2:15 speaks of. But really, the ancient paths of Yahweh show that a day starts at dawn. And what I mean by that is, like, when you see the first light in the sky, not when the sun is rising, but when you see the first light in the sky, that's when the day starts. That's what I mean by that. Babylon is who came up with 24-hour days that start at midnight, right? So our 24-hour day that we have, which the military actually has, 24 hours on their clock and everything like that. But that's where it came from. That concept came from Babylon. Whereas the ancient paths, we know that there are 12, Yahushua says in the book of John that there are 12 hours in a day. Well, what he meant by that is not 12 60-minute hours like we have now, because they didn't have the technology that we have, like watches and clocks and so on and so forth. All they had was a sundial. All they had was approximates, right? So they had 12 segments of a day that were an approximate measurement of time called an hour. This is why Peter got up in Acts chapter 2 and he said, these men are not drunk because it's only the third hour of the day, right? Well, could it have been right around 9 o'clock in the morning? Yes, it could have. But they don't know exactly what time the sun, the day was starting, in the morning. But approximately, yes, right around like 6 o'clock in the morning. But also we know that, through the seasons, through what Brother Conrad's been teaching us regarding the circuit of the sun and the timing of the seasons and everything, that, certain times of the year, it gets light, it takes longer to get light in the morning. Other times of the year, it's light earlier in the morning, right? We know that, right? And then under Babylon, you have the ever-changing days for the lunar Shabbat. So, like every month, it switches to a new day just to keep up, with what they're doing. But we know that we have a fixed seventh-day Shabbat based upon the Genesis 1 creation, where Yahweh created the days, right? Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7th, he rested, right? Babylon teaches a 354 days or an added 13th month to make up for missing days, right? Days of the week were given names of deities. Monday, let me start out Sunday. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, right? All these are tied to different deities. You can break them down and go back to the etymology and find it. But we were told to number our days that we may gain wisdom, not give them names, from Psalm 90, verse 12, right? Follows the new moon, or is it the full moon? I don't know, too much confusion. Anyway, but we follow 360 days, 12 30-day months, which we've shown, the three of us have shown at least 17 references from Scripture proving 30 days in a month, right? This requires eisegesis to get moon, because new moon is actually new month. Now, Brother Jose is going to touch on more of that, right? Requires the extra support of extra books like Jubilees in order to stand, and then the naming of months. Ours requires nothing else. It stands on its own. The word stands on its own, right? We know that. Let Scripture interpret Scripture. That's the best way. And then, so they name their months over here. Now, do you think that Yahweh is pleased in part of the Hillel calendar that there's a month named after Nimrod's son, Tammuz? Because I really doubt that he is. So why would anyone want to, once you've, I made a post this morning, once we've identified who the synagogue of Satan is, why in our right mind will we ever continue to follow them and their ways and what they teach and when they say a day starts and everything else? Why would we do that? We wouldn't. It doesn't make any sense. But we're called to number our months.
Join the meeting.
12. Simple as that, 1 through 12. So I know the people here on this, in this chat room, you guys, you've already chosen, at least I think you have, right? But for those who are watching this in the future, I ask you a question. Which do you choose? I present to you the Joshua 24:15. Choose this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve Yahweh or Elohim. All right. And with that, I conclude. I thank you. Any questions, comments, complaints, you can send them right here to muchmoretruth@gmail.com. And let me hang on one second. I'm going to show a brief video real quick. Oh, this is the consequences of if you don't come out of her. So give me 1 second here. This is a 1-minute video, so bear with me 2 seconds. So Facebook trolled me with this video yesterday. It's an advertisement for a thermal cam that you set up in like a restaurant or whatever. And it tracks your temperature, does facial recognition, and it can even tell if you're not wearing a mask or not. Sends alerts when someone isn't wearing a mask. Boom, right there. Oh, lady, you're not wearing a mask. Oh, that's okay. I have a religious exemption. Oh, no. I bowed. Ugh, I guess I'm failed. So this is the consequences right here. If you want to stay within Babylon, you want to keep interacting with Babylon, with the world, this is what we have to succumb to. Right here. Facial recognition, that's what that box is. Somebody posted in the chat the other day, yesterday, that the Predator, the movie Predator, the trailer, and how like the thermal imaging reminded them of Predator. So that's the consequences of if we don't choose to come out of her, my people, because that's what we're faced with. I mean, you know, I'm not here to tell anybody what to do or anything like that, but you know, I know for like me and my wife, like, well, we didn't really have that much of a social life, but you know, even more so now, where like the only reason we go anywhere is, you know, I go to work and then like, you know, every couple of weeks we'll go to the store, you know, while we still can, but like going to restaurants, you know, or even, you know, like I just buzzed my hair, you know, because I don't have Sister Mickey down here. If I had Sister Mickey, I'd have hope of still having a stylable haircut. But, you know, we have to give up things. You know, ladies, I would challenge you, you know, should you be going and still getting, you know, your manis and pedicures done? You know, or are you going to learn how to maybe do it at home? Maybe it won't look as good. Maybe it won't feel as good, whatever. But is it worth putting a mask on for luxuries of life? Is it worth succumbing to that? You know, again, I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do. I'm just, you know, seek Yahweh, fast, pray about it, ask yourself, examine. This is what we're called to do in this hour, is to, in this time frame of the you know, calendar that we're in, as we're moving into the Day of Atonement, you know, Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, everything like that, that we're called to afflict ourselves. We're called to examine ourselves, take inventory. You know, these are just conversations that I would want to have, is how much do you want to interact with her? You know, because for me, like, I want to interact with her, meaning the world, as little as possible. You know, and honestly, because I'm not in the world, like interacting with it, I sometimes forget, like, oh crap, this whole mask thing is still happening. You know, like, oh wait, the New World Order is still happening. You know, so anyway, I'll let y'all talk. Sorry, I've talked too much, but
Thank you, brother. I appreciate your great presentation. Enjoyed watching it again. I got paying more attention to this today because, you know, yesterday I was fixing a little bit of the PowerPoints. But it's interesting how the Tower of Babel that you presented a picture of, it looks like the parliament at the European unions in France, at Strasbourg, France. And it's got the same design. And it is a European Union. I don't know if you ever actually had a chance to research that.
For what now? The Tower of Babel?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
Oh, wow.
it's the same design. Yeah, the same design as you had actually shown there. It's in Strasbourg, France, for the European Union Parliament.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Did not know that. That's interesting.
So that just put it right there on your face. Yeah. Beth, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I wanted to make a question. No, not really a question, but a comment. Yeah, what you're just saying, Brendan, about like when sometimes you go out and you forget, that we're in this nightmare. That happened to me because this past weekend I didn't come to the gathering with you because I went on a camping trip with 30 people up a very awesome place, a valley surrounded by mountains that are like actually naturally shaped like pyramids. It was just a gorgeous place. Well, it wasn't like perfect because all the people were in the world. I was the only believer there. So, when you're like surrounded by 30 people, they were very nice people. But I felt a little bit uneasy, but it was an opportunity for me to get out of the city, so I took it. And nobody was wearing a mask. Nobody was social distancing the whole entire weekend. And that was the most awesome part, besides Yas creation. So when I came back to the city, Sunday night, and then the beginning of this week, when I went out, I was shocked. Oh no, the mask is still here, because I had kind of forgotten, and it's so good when this is not happening. But now this is the world we live in. In Brazil, like I said, there are no religious exemptions, there's no way around it. If you want to buy food, if you want to go into any store to get anything, you have to wear a mask. They won't let you in. There's no such a thing as exemptions. But anyhow, I wanted to talk about just very briefly ask you if there's like a teaching as brief as possible that I could go over, maybe in video or written form, about the Shabbat starting in the daytime, on Saturday rather than
Yeah.
sundown on Friday,
Yeah.
because I've never really studied that. I would like to understand it. I have a lot of things to study. I still got to go through the whole Melchizedek series from Matthew Nolan, which I haven't watched it yet. And I know I need to do it. This is like an urgent matter to me to really understand the Melchizedek priesthood, which I don't. But I also want to understand the calendar, the Shabbat starting at daylight and how the day starts in the daylight. I want to understand that more because if, like you said, celebrating Shabbat from Friday evening until Saturday evening is from Babylon, then I want to come out of that too,
Amen. Amen. Praise Yah. Yeah, I'm actually posting in the chat right now the YouTube video. I believe this was Jose and I talking about the seventh day of the week, the way of the Aharonic priesthood, and what they did on Shabbat. And then the portion I did was on how we keep the Shabbat under the Melchizedek priesthood. So, but in that we talk about we dive into like when the day starts and everything like that, I believe. And if not, I'll definitely get you the information for sure. So.
Yeah, thanks. I think Conrad did touch up on also the who the Shabbat was given to, who was it made for. He went into the purpose of it and all, which is good. We did a video one time. Is that the one that we were not able to post? That I think Conrad did a video. I think it was a combination between him, you, and I, and we did a video in regards to the day. But I think this one right here, Beth, is actually a good place to start, and it'll give you some really good references. But just so you know, I mean, it's if you look at the day of creation, it's got the week of creation. Yahuwah did his work during the daylight. Like you have the first around 12 hours, the half part of the day. Then evening and morning came, and then he called that the second, third day, and so on. There was a repetition to that. So if we know that the day ended in the morning, then we rationally we have to understand that it also starts in the morning, right? So if it ends in the morning, it starts in the morning. So right there is a very clear indication how from the beginning he had created those days and how we're supposed to observe them. And there's many, many more scriptures, but at least, if we go back to Genesis, it's a pretty clear indication of when the morning starts. It starts in the dawn.
Yes,
So
and there is so much preponderance of scriptures in Genesis that explicitly, undeniable, claim definitely that the day starts at dawn or in the morning. It's right there in front of our faces. But because of tradition of Judaism that believes that a day called light begins at nightfall, that doesn't make sense. And that is what people believe. A day called light begins at nightfall in the western horizon. Think about it.
Yeah, I'd love to get those scriptural references so I could study it for myself, and if you can find the video and send it to me. I know Brendan has my Facebook contacts, so I'd really appreciate that. I want to study that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
Is that the one that you just posted in Facebook, the seventh day? I think.
Yeah, I just posted it on Facebook.
Oh, okay,
as
okay,
well.
perfect.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now we have around 7 minutes before we get started. So Mike and Mickey, question, comments. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I actually just wanted those 17 references that were mentioned. We don't necessarily need to read them. I just wanted to be able to write them down. Or if they're in the
I'll
chat,
have
something
to
like that.
I'll have to get them for you because I know that I mean it's been over the last probably 60 days of our teachings that we've gone through and listed them. I think it was mostly in Conrad's, but there were several in. So there was,
I'll
there was-
email them.
yeah,
him.
yeah. But there was some in Genesis 7 and 8. There was in Esther, the book of Esther. There was the book of Daniel there, and then the book of Revelation as well, all referring to months that were divisible by 30 evenly. So,
I'll go ahead and email those to you, Mike.
Yeah,
I have your
absolutely.
email.
One thing I wanted to say that Roger commented on real quick, and then I'll get to Mickey, is Roger said that these pastors are preaching another gospel. And Roger, you are 110% correct. Because 2 Corinthians 11 speaks all about it. They're preaching another gospel about another Messiah inspired by another spirit. And no wonder, because Satan appears as an angel of light. They are agents of Satan. I'm no longer giving them the benefit of the doubt they've had long enough. They are, and the majority of pastors are actually Masons. So they know darn well what they're doing. They know. And they're agents of FEMA. They're in contact with FEMA. They know all of it. They're going, don't even get me started on that. It just makes me want to make whips and start flipping tables and everything. So calling down fire,
Yeah.
Who knows?
It's how they maintain control, right? It's tentacles where it filters down like their pyramid worship structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the Nicolaitans. I mean, that's literally like the one thing that Yahusha condemned is exactly what they do. The Nicolaitan lineage pyramid thing, structure, as you said. So, yeah. I mean, Sister Mickey, how are you?
I am blessed, favorably blessed, as Dawn would say. So Beth, the Melchizedek teaching, there's 7 of them. But if you want to just understand the Melchizedek teaching, listen to the intro. I listened to the intro alone, and every one of my Christian loose ends were tied down. And I mean, it was the most amazing revelation. Now then after that, you have to listen through 2 through 7 to get all the scripture references to really validate what he was telling you. But to just get the concept, the outline is in the intro, invaluable.
That's
I
awesome.
was
Thank
preaching
you.
it the next day,
That's great. Thanks, sister. I'll do that.
Get the roots. You have to start with the roots first. When you get the roots, then you get the branches, and you get the leaves, and you get the fruits. So start with the roots.
Yeah.
Hallelujah. That's great.
Yeah, and what was the one that he did with at Passion for Truth. It was like called The Mystery of Melchizedek. Was that what it was called? That's not the Israel one. That's a different one, right? I want to say.
I think
But
it was
that
the
one was-
Melchizedek. I think it was the Melchizedek connection, right?
That's what, yep, that's it, yep, yeah, so that's another good one as well. Interestingly enough, Beth, they actually have that one in Spanish on the YouTube channel as well, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
English is better for me, but thank you.
Oh, no, I was just talking about like, you know, for,
Yeah, for other
maybe
friends
somebody-
and stuff.
yeah,
Yes.
friends and stuff like
Okay.
that, yeah.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
good.
so.
You're
Excellent.
Portuguese anyway, so that's all right.
Oh, that's true,
Bilingual.
yeah, see, that's just some dumb Yankee talking.
Yeah, I get this all the time. People come and oh, buenos dias, and I'm like,
Right, right.
bon dia, you know, if you want to read my language.
And soccer, they used to call me Pele.
Oh, goodness, all right. Awesome.
All right.
All right. Any other questions, comments?
Okay.
No?
All right. So, all right, great. Well, I hope that that was able to edify you and help you and bless you.